Shalom everybody, and welcome to this episode of The Watchdog. In December of 1993, Universal Pictures released one of the most powerful films in modern American cinema, at least almost universally said so by film critics. Steven Spielberg's Schindler's List starred Liam Neeson in the phenomenal role of German industrialist Oskar Schindler, a member of the Nazi Party who produced enamelware and ammunitions in German-occupied Poland, using almost exclusively forced Jewish labor. He had been a member of the Abwehr, the German military's intelligence service, and was actively involved in collecting information in Czechoslovakia and Poland in anticipation of a coming German invasion. He made equipment for the German war effort using his enamelware factories, and again, I hasten to add that he actively participated in Jewish enslavement for many years, using cheap, sometimes free, Jewish labor to his advantage. He made a fortune off of this, and is, in many respects, probably the kind of person who we would end up trying at the Nuremberg trials. But that is not the end of the story for Mr. Schindler. In March of 1943, Mr. Schindler witnessed something that would radically alter the remainder of his days. In an event known to history as the Krakow liquidation event, Mr. Schindler witnessed the murder of over 2,000 Jews, the sick, elderly, and the children, all of whom had been deemed by the Nazi Party unfit for work in the Plaszow labor camp. An additional 8,000 Jews were located from Krakow into Plaszow under Schindler's watch. Mr. Schindler was horrified by this, and what followed is one of the greatest stories of redemption in modern history. Mr. Schindler would use his fabulous wealth and Nazi connections to save the lives of over 1,200 Jewish men, women, and children from the Auschwitz concentration camp. He spent so much in bribing German officials and in transporting his workers that he actually ended up losing his entire multi-million-dollar fortune. And if it were not for the good graces of those people he saved, would end up being broke after the war. For his efforts, he was famously given a ring with the Hebrew inscription, Kol hamatzil nafesh achat, ki elul hitzil olam umelo. Whosoever saves one life, saves the world entire. While certainly not a one-to-one comparison, my guest this morning certainly fits into the category of wonderful redemption stories. A director of Planned Parenthood's largest Arizona location, Mrs. Mayra Rodriguez, dedicated 17 years of her professional life to abortion's largest provider in the world. And yet tonight, she'll be speaking at a pro-life gala here in my hometown of Boise, Idaho. We're going to get to the details of this incredible story momentarily, but first I should like to begin by asking Mrs. Rodriguez about the wonderful mercy of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and how is it manifested in her life.
Wow. I mean, I think every day I can see His mercy on my life. You know, as a Catholic, I never understood as a child what it meant, the divine mercy, right? It's something Catholics, we are very, I'm not going to say attached because that's not the right word, but we're very funded of the divine mercy. And I thought it was just an image, to be honest, right? Like, I didn't grow up, even though I grew up in a strong Catholic household, it wasn't what I would call a smart Catholic household. I inherited the religion, you know, not understanding what anything meant in my religion. And once I started putting together the divine mercy in my story, people started giving me books and books about what it means. Then I understood, and the divine mercy has to do about a nun. She dreamt about Jesus and how Jesus will come and tell her, you know, please rescue the souls. And she could see the pain of the souls. I'm just going to tell the story really short. And then say, the greater the sinner, the greater the mercy when we convert, right? Which is what people need to understand and not misinterpret, right? Mm-hmm. And I didn't understand that until in my story it reflected that. To be honest, after 70 years of promoting death, basically that's what I did. I promoted the death of children and the destruction of those mothers and their family, the entire family, right? to be receiving the mercy that I get from him every day, that I see in the pro-life movement. You know, when I come into a state like today, I'm here in Idaho, and it's one of the strongest pro-life places in the world. I'm gonna say in the world, okay, because it is, right? And everyone here is so welcoming, and the pro-life movement has been so strong and standing ground, and to be welcome and to be known as someone that they want to hear from me, that's pretty amazing. And I think that's his mercy. To me, that's his mercy. And the same thing, you know, I had seen my children's conversion to come back to the faith, and many people that were for abortion before and now are for life, you know, that many people with my story have converted. That's to me what mercy looks like. And of course, the point that now I get to redeem, right? Now I get to understand what I did wrong, and having the time to amend for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because how many people go through their life doing wrong, and they only have those, like, the last few minutes of their life to repent. But then actually when God gives you the opportunity to repent, redeem, and do something about it, can you imagine? That's mercy. That's what mercy looks like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm reminded a little bit of I can't remember which verse it is in particular, but when Jesus tells the story of the man forgiven much and the one forgiven little, which one is more grateful, more thankful, right? And certainly there are many other interesting stories we could have used besides Schindler, but I think it might make the point, you know, and especially as we get into your own, how awesome this kind of a story is. I'd like to actually jump into that story now, if we may. You were, correct me if I'm wrong, but you actually directed the largest Planned Parenthood in Phoenix for 17 years, is that right?
Well, no, that's the thing. So I started working at Planned Parenthood in the year 2000. And, you know, the way I started working for Planned Parenthood, it was just, I will say, really innocent. My friend worked there. And one day I had my baby. She was about a year old. Christmas was coming, and I was complaining about not being able to spend the holidays with her. And my friend said, "You should come work with me." And I'm like, we help women, and they need people who speak Spanish. And I'm like, okay. I didn't know who Planned Parenthood was back then in 2000. I came from Mexico. I grew up in Mexico City. I had come from Mexico in the year 95. So it was illegal in my country. I was pro-life for me, myself, you know, Catholic. I was having my family, so I never knew anything about Planned Parenthood, except that my friend worked there, that they help women, and they needed people who speak Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, what could go wrong with that, right? My friend never mentioned abortion, you know, even now we still talk, and she says, you're right, because she didn't do abortions in the site she was at. She never even talked about it, you know, because it was promoting reproductive services.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got the job, I remember the first thing they asked me was, what do you think about abortion? That's when I asked about the people praying on the sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what are those people doing? Oh, they're just praying. And she said, what do you think about abortion? I said, well, I wouldn't have one. You know, I thought I answered like a great Catholic Christian person. I wouldn't have one.
Mm-hmm.
But if someone else does, who am I to interfere between them and their decisions, their body, their choice? So I started working there, and then I basically escalated. You know, I started going through the range, and I became a team leader, an assistant manager. Then I was managing the Title X centers. Are you familiar with Title X centers?
I am, but I don't believe our audience would.
Perfect. So Title X centers are the centers that Planned Parenthood kind of open to manage our money. That's the way I explain it now, which is basically what it is, right? The government gives this money through Title X, which is just for reproductive education and products and services. And the government gives this money, and then Planned Parenthood is one of the recipients of this title. Basically, one of the only recipients, based on my experience. Very few that get that money, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways, they get that money, and for the longest, Title X has had the exclusion that money cannot have anything to do with abortion, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then they kept them. So purposely, they kept centers open that had nothing to do with abortion, so they could use the Title X money. right? So for the longest, I managed those centers. So when I told people I had nothing to do with abortion, I used the same excuse they did.
Right.
And it wasn't until I left them that I understood the way they trained me back then. The way they trained me back then was in case someone goes and does an investigation of the money they've been using on Title 10 or whatnot, all the employees say, we have nothing to do with abortion. Kind of like, it's a thing that make you memorize, right?
Right.
So I remember answering that to even my mother when she questioned me, why are you working for Planned Parenthood? People say they kill babies, and I said, no, I have nothing to do with abortion. We don't do that. I help women prevent pregnancies. I help women prevent abortions. And for the longest I did that. And then I became a training coordinator. And what does that mean is that I was training everyone who got hired by Planned Parenthood Arizona on the basics of Planned Parenthood. I even designed this training program where on the first day I will teach them the history about Planned Parenthood, everything, like what is Planned Parenthood, their mission, the vision, the statement, right? And who they were, how they were funded. So I thought I knew everything about Margaret Sanger, okay, because I was doing it, but I only knew the Planned Parenthood version of her. But anyways, so I will train people. I was trained to ultrasound, and I train others to ultrasound. Just so you know, my only medical license, not even a license, certification came from Mexico.
Okay.
I was a medical lab technician, and Planned Parenthood hired me knowing that. They liked that certification. They didn't care that I had nothing else in the United States but my high school diploma and some college credits. And with that, they trained me to do ultrasounds, and they trained me to train others to do ultrasounds for early detection of pregnancy. And so after that, they were like, okay, Mayra, we need you to go back and keep managing the Title 10 centers because they were losing managers. So Planned Parenthood has an issue retaining employees. I think by now most people know that. They have a really hard time retaining employees. So by now, I'm managing again 2 centers, and that's when I get the Employee of the Year award, and when they give me being the director of the abortion facility. So technically, I only directed the largest abortion facility for 10 months, but I worked for Planned Parenthood Arizona for 17 years.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I knew everything about them from the non-abortion side to the administration side, and then I ended up at the abortion side, which is what I learned, what the whole business about abortion was.
And I note here that you have you won actually an Employee of the Year award there. What were some of the details around how you actually came to win that award?
Well, the award was given, employees picked that. Actually, it was probably one of those questionnaires that they say pick whoever you want voting.
Right.
They send people to vote for it. And I was actually very surprised about it. I was not expecting it because I thought most people didn't like me. I was really harsh as a director. I had this reputation that when they send me to a center, usually I was the cleanup person, which means that when a clinic was doing bad, they will send me to basically retrain the staff or rehire if necessary, clean up the place, to hire the manager, and then leave the place running, right? So I did that at a few centers. So the word around was that I was basically the cleanup person and that I would fire people a lot. I didn't fire them, they quit, when I jump in. But I had that reputation. So obviously when I came to that event, and it was like an old staff day meeting that they do annually where we get all the staff from all the centers from the entire state, and they come and then we have a whole day of kind of like a conference thing, get together, stuff like that. And it was the first year they did the Employee of the Year award, and I was very surprised when I got it. They said, because this is what people said, that I was, yes, strict, but a rule follower, but because I care about my job and people and the women that work there and the women that came to us. And then because I was a team player, and you're gonna love the other reason, because I was very strong and abiding by the mission and vision of Planned Parenthood, right? So basically I was really good for their business. That's what I take out of that.
Right.
So I got the Employee of the Year award because I was really good about their business. And with that award, that's when they promoted me to the director. To them, it was a promotion. To me, I'm gonna be honest with you, it felt like a punishment. I'm like, wait, so you're praising me for being a good employee, but then you're putting me in the worst clinic ever that we have. Because I knew there was so bad around. Like, I knew people complain a lot to work there.
And I know here also you only worked there for 10 months. And that might come as a little bit of a shock to people, how fast that goes from director of the largest abortion clinic there in Phoenix. It wasn't Phoenix, right?
It was Glendale, Arizona, which is right next to Phoenix. So basically, Phoenix metropolitan area, yeah.
Actually, we were just in Glendale. I guess that was a couple years ago now, but big Cardinals fan. So.
Oh, nice.
So, take us through that 10 months. How did you go from directing to quitting that quickly?
Well, you know, I was not excited to get the job. I'm gonna be very honest with you. I think when they offered me the job after the award, they were like, Mayra, we need you to be the director of the biggest abortion facility, right? And I was like, no, thank you. And then they're like, well, Trump's gonna start closing our centers. And remember, it was about the funding title, the Title 10 program, and those were the two centers that I managed. So they were like, we're gonna start closing centers. I cannot guarantee I'll have a job for you when that happens. So that's why basically it was saying, I'm being nice to you, putting you in a place now before the cookie crumbles.
Right.
And I said, well, I mean, I don't know, that place is, like, there's just too much going on there. No one wants to work there. You know, the abortionists, they're always so hard to deal with. I don't know. And then I remember the 2 weeks passed when basically my supervisor gave me an ultimatum. I said, look, I need you to give me an answer because I need to hire someone. That place had been without a center director for over a year. They had hired people that quit within a week. So basically, I had one director for over a year. It was a mess, and it's the money making, right?
Yeah.
So I said, okay, fine. So then they gave me the job, and even though I didn't want to do the job, I mean, I decided I was gonna do my best. You know, usually Mexicans. I'm Mexican. So usually Mexicans are known, most of us, I'm not saying everyone, but most of us are known for being hard workers. So obviously I was gonna give more than 100 of myself, and I did. I will work there. I was working 7 days a week because now I'm managing 3 centers. It's not that they took away the other 2. I was managing 3 centers, and I had to travel to all the centers during the week. And this center opened on Sundays, so I will be there on Sundays, especially because it was really hard for me to get full staff for Sundays. So I decided I was gonna do the best I can, right? Even though I'm not, you know, so for this job, I'm gonna do the best I can. And you know, sadly, it wasn't because I understood how bad abortion was, you know, sadly. I mean, now when I think about it, I'm like, wow. To think that my excuses not to take the job had nothing to do with the horrors of abortion, but actually because I didn't want the struggles of that place, you know. And then obviously for 17 years, I had managed to be away from the abortion directly, which kind of like an excuse as a Catholic person, as a Christian person, like, well, I'm actually not there doing that, you know, like in your mind, you're gonna be okay when you meet your maker because you were not actually doing that.
Right.
That in my little imaginary world, right? That I was being excusing myself. So then obviously all those things obviously come to a different place when you start realizing what you're actually doing. And you know, one of the things I remember the most is that through all my 60 years, of course, at the non-abortion sites, women come there, do the pregnancy test, and the one thing we're trained to do is to promote abortion. So I will talk to them about the abortion, and I will explain to them about abortion. And hey, so you're gonna go and you're gonna have what is like a surgery, but it's not a surgery. They're literally just removing something. You'll have some cramping, 15 minutes. You'll go back to normal. You'll take a pill, you'll bleed like a period, you'll go back to normal. So for 17 years, I've been telling women this. And now here I am, watching them every day, and that's not what's happening. Like, that's not at all what's happening. That's the first thing that started waking me up. It's those phone calls from the girls taking the pills, right, crying in the middle of the night, like, hey, you told me it was gonna be like a period, but this excruciating pain, I think I'm dying. Like, and I'm bleeding so much. This is not like a period, right? Or the phone calls on the night of the women saying like, you told me when I pushed that big blood clot in the toilet, but it looks like a baby. And I even think he's moving. Can you imagine getting those phone calls in the night when you told them, oh, it'll be just a period, you'll be fine. For 17 years, so then you start realizing, wait, that's what I tell you, man. But then one of the things that really started getting to me from the beginning was how I was a very strong rule follower. Like I would follow the rules to the dot, right? The protocols to the dot. And constantly there were things not being followed in that place, and by the abortionist himself, right? Usually the staff, they're like, oh, sorry, yeah, I know I missed that. Right. Oh, sorry, I made that mistake. But no, the abortionist purposely was not following rules and laws in the state of Arizona, like signing off the 24-hour waiting documentation part, like going and checking on the products of conception from the baby, right? Like the state of Arizona had a law that himself had to go and check the products of conception. He will constantly not do that. And then I start seeing all these things not happening. But then I start seeing women getting hurt too. I start getting a lot of records from emergency rooms saying that they had been women there showing up perforated. And then I'm starting hearing that this is normal. And I'm like, what? Like, this is normal. Like, yeah, that happens. I'm like, no, that's not what we tell them that happens.
Right.
We tell them it rarely happens, and this is every day. Every day women are leaving the center perforated. Like, so then those things, and then the money thing. That was a big one, because I just told you that for 16 years I managed centers that have nothing to do with abortion. If I saw 12 patients, I was like, oh, great job, Mayra. But here now I'm giving a quota. I have to see 45 patients a day.
Oh, wow.
Now, just for you to do the math, each patient, if they're under 12 weeks, they're paying $595 back then. Right now, I think it has increased. So, and then any patient after 12 weeks, the price increases $120 per week of pregnancy. Basically, so if they're 13 weeks, it's $120 more. If they are 14 weeks, $120 more, and so on and so forth.
Right.
So now, if you do the math, what kind of money is that? I mean, you look like you could do math really quick, so I'll let you do that. I'm not that good at it, but that's a lot of money. You're talking that my deposits from an abortion facility were about $20 grand a day, compared to $300 or maybe $1,000 from the non-abortion side. So I was like, wait, this is not 3% of our business. Like, I'm not good at math like I used to, but yeah, that's not 3%.
Yeah, and actually there's a quick note I want to get to here in regards to that. The Hyde Amendment famously, which you kind of alluded to earlier, famously restricts the ability of clinics to use federal money for abortion clinics. Now, there's a loophole around that, of course, which is that states can use their own money for it.
Exactly.
But there's also a lot of reports that maybe the allocation of those federal funds is not quite as honest as the voter would like. As a director, did you ever see any abuse of Hyde Amendment money?
Yeah, of course. It's the Title X money I was talking about. So one of the centers that they had me overseeing was Flagstaff. And now, are you familiar with Arizona? Flagstaff, it's the northern side of Arizona. It's known for the big college campus. Basically, there's all there is in Flagstaff, right? The Northern Arizona University. And so we had a center there. They have a center there, and then I was managing that center, and that center did abortions 1 day a week, and the rest it was Title X. And they sent me to manage that center because they couldn't retain a director. So, and they said they couldn't afford a director full time, and then they were having a hard time finding a director who would work the hours they needed them to work, because obviously they needed a director for the Title X side, because supposedly they wanted to do things correctly. So then when I go up there and then I start seeing, I'm like, wait, it's the same building. You're paying the rent. You're paying the electrical bill.
Right.
And Title X's paying for that because that's where you're billing it through, right? So one thing that people can, why would Planned Parenthood be so vicious about Title X? People must think that because they're like, well, if you say they make millions in abortion, then why do they care about Title X? Well, when you're a Title X provider, you get a special classification to buy drugs, which are very discounted one. I'm telling you, Planned Parenthood will buy the packs of pills at cents per pack and resell it at $30 a pack, $25 to $30 a pack. So that's what people need to understand. When you are a Title X organization, funded organization, then you get discounts on many things, right? Because you're supposedly providing for underprivileged people. So we have to look at the discounts that Planned Parenthood gets, the privileges that Planned Parenthood gets when they get the Title X funding.
Right.
And one of them is the amount of money they pay for pharmaceuticals, which is nothing.
And really quick, does that include like abortificants?
No, that does not include that. But imagine if you are getting all these other medications under really, really cheap price than what you pay for the abortion pill and the, well, first of all, misoprostol. The thing about misoprostol, I don't understand, which is a combination with mifeprex that they use, is that misoprostol, since it is not created for abortions, they can still get it very inexpensive.
Right.
Right? So then when you're saving all that money and all that chunk of money on the rest of it, then imagine then the amount of money you have left for the other side. And so in this place, my argument was, and there was a whole email about it that I sent my supervisor on the notes of my findings, right? The red flags. I said, first of all, you serve women that come asking questions about abortion on Title X days. You do pregnancy tests that end up being on abortion only. You know, like if a woman took the abortion pill in Flagstaff on, let's say, a Friday where their abortion day was, and then comes on Monday complaining about what happened to her and issues, they have to see her.
Right.
So that's an abortion patient under your title, right? So you're consulting an abortion client under your title money. So there are all those little details like that they add up. So yeah, I did see misuse of the funds, and not only about title, but also with Medicare, right? I remember when we had patients coming in for their abortion and they had access, they will open basically 2 tickets, one to build insurance and one for the self-pay. And basically the client already paid the $595, but then they will still bill insurance for the lab work, for their consultation fee,
right,
and things like. And the consultation will be birth control, you know, because technically they ask, would you like to take birth control today? That was it, you know. So now I notice a lot of misuse of funds.
And I think another thing that would probably be very interesting for the audience sake here is when you were doing the work at the abortion clinic specifically, we hear very often that for the most part, these kinds of procedures take place either on incredibly young individuals or on people who are victims of rape, incest, threat to the mother's life, something along those lines. And my understanding is that Planned Parenthood's own numbers indicate that is less than 95% of abortions. Was that your experience as well?
Yeah, so about not even 3%. I can tell you that in my 17 years of running centers, not once did I consult or talk to a woman that had been raped. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Like 17 years not ever seeing anyone in your center. This is Planned Parenthood, right? This is where women came, like when they're looking for abortions, but not once did a woman come in my center and says, I need an abortion because I was raped. Not once. So it is less than 3% of the abortions, right? The second thing, young women. The average abortion client is 19 to 26. Okay. So it's not young women. Right. It was hardly any teenagers, right? And then one thing I did witness was statutory rape, which means it's a minor having sex with an adult, but it's still considered like a statutory rape because of age. That we did see a lot, and that Planned Parenthood constantly, my supervisors will be like, well, like the abortionists will be like, well, it depends the way you ask them. Like, what do you mean? Yeah, I mean, tell them that if they tell you, so they will train staff to say like, well, if you disclose to me that your partner is 2.5 years older than you, I will have to report that. Do you think a 16-year-old will tell me now that her boyfriend's 19?
Yeah.
I just told her we will report him. So she's not going to disclose that. She's not going to disclose it. And sometimes even if they say, well, because he's 19, I'm only 16, I'm going to pretend I didn't hear that. And I know you saw those undercover videos that David Delight did, and you heard that a lot, even on live action undercover videos, how a lot of times I'm going to pretend you didn't say that to me, right? And we're trained to do that. So when people said that in those videos, I'm like, yeah, that's exactly how we were trained, how I was trained and how I train others.
Did you ever have any experience with, we've seen with some of those undercover videos, of course there was the incredibly famous case in California regarding like organ harvesting and stuff like that, but there were also famous cases regarding infants born alive that were then later exposed and left to die by exposure, and also encouragement for women who maybe didn't want to get an abortion because there would be a better impact on the bottom line monetarily. In any of those three categories, did you ever see any of that sort of stuff in Arizona?
Yeah, so especially on the last one, I remember in my beginning years. So at the beginning years of my time in Planned Parenthood, just so you can like figure how this setup was. The headquarters had two centers at the bottom. So the headquarters was in the second floor, and at the bottom we had door A, which was abortion, door B for birth control. I used to work in door B. And I remember door A was short staffed, and my supervisor at door B says she knew that I was really good at doing blood work. I had a medical lab technician diploma from Mexico. And she will be like, hey, we're gonna need you to help door A in the mornings just to do blood work. And then once you're done, you can come back here. You'll get paid those extra hours because they start at 7 in the morning. We don't start until 9 a.m.
Right.
So I was like, okay, fine. And I remember even saying, but I have to go before the machine turns on. Like, I don't want to be there to hear that vacuum, right? And I remember there was this time that back then Arizona will go up to 24 weeks of gestation. For the people that don't think that second trimester abortions exist, they've been happening for a long time. I'm talking about the early 2000s. This is like 2002. No, not even, because I was pregnant with my son, so about 2000.
Okay.
And so I remember that I was doing the normal thing, poking the ladies' fingers, doing their vitals and stuff, because back then they will line them up like cattle. And one by one they will come to my station at the lab, and I will send them to a big room where they will watch a video, right? And then I remember then all of a sudden this lady that was on her second day of the procedure, she was a second trimester abortion, came in, and they sent her to the bathroom, and apparently she had gone into labor earlier because of everything they have given her, right? Which is hard to explain, so I don't think we'll go into detail of that. But she came in, and we were in the middle of doing the lab work, and I guess she said, can I use the restroom before I go into the room? They told her, yeah. All of a sudden we hear a scream from her. The nurse goes in, the assistant manager goes in, the assistant manager comes right up the door. She's like, send everybody out and you can go back to your clinic, right? And I said, okay, that was kind of weird, right? So I was like, okay, fine. And I'm like, okay, so I cleared the area, I sent the women back to the lobby, gave all my paperwork to the front desk, and went to my clinic. So obviously later, gossiping between employees, when we were at lunch or back then on the back door, I'm asking, stuff, hey, what happened? Like, what happened this morning? And then one of the girls are, well, apparently that lady, the baby was born in the bathroom. And they let him die on the little bathroom. She was 23 weeks, and she didn't want anyone else there, so no one knew that they were letting the baby die.
Mm-hmm.
So he was born alive. They're like, yeah, he was moving and everything, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So that was back then. But again, I took it as, well, could it be? Obviously, when I asked the assistant manager, she's like, nah, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't happen. Like, it was just gonna be a hard case. She was gonna be screaming. That's
Right.
what she said, right? But that's what they said. And then later we found out that it was true, that it had been born alive. But anyways, and then the case of basically when the women are already in the room, a lot of them said, I think I changed my mind. No, we're already here. It's too late.
Mm-hmm.
No, like, we won't give you back your money. No, it's too late for you to change your mind. We already started.
Right.
We gotta finish. I had a client who did the abortion pill, and I remember her clearly, and you're gonna know why I remember her so clearly, but she was only 7 weeks when she came for the pill, and then she came back. Usually you tell them, hey, you can have a follow-up in 2 weeks to see if the pill worked. No one comes back,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So she came back a month later, 4 or 5 weeks later. She thought she was pregnant again.
Mm-hmm.
And she made her appointment, and she's like, I think I'm pregnant again. And when we did the ultrasound, she wasn't pregnant again. She was now almost 13 weeks pregnant, which means the baby survived the abortion pill. Right? And at that moment, I'm like, well, no, it seems that the pill didn't work. She's like, what do you mean? I said, well, no, it didn't work. The baby's 13 weeks. There's a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
So the pill didn't work. She said, maybe this is a sign that I should keep him. And I said, well, I have to let the doctor know. She'll come in and talk to you. And she's like, okay. Then the abortionist went into the room and was like, no, don't think that way. No, don't put things like that in your head. We can just finish what we started today.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, because you don't know the side effects of the abortion pill, what could go wrong with the baby. There's no research that they can survive these things, even though we have proof that babies have survived the abortion pill, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and the girl's like, well, I don't know. And she's like, well, you have to do it. And if you do it today, we won't charge you extra.
Wow.
Right? And basically forcing her to complete it. Well, they perforated her.
Mm-hmm.
She ended up being perforated, and she was bleeding. And I remember that she called a week later and she's like, I'm still bleeding. Is this normal? I'm still cramping really bad. And they're like, yeah, it's normal. It's because you took the pill, and then we did the aspiration, and you were longer now. It was a little rougher on your body and whatnot. All these excuses that they give women, right? But anyways, she went into the emergency room a couple weeks later. Now we're talking about this has been almost 2 months that she took the pill,
Mm-hmm.
right? And she went into the emergency room, and she had been perforated. They had to repair the perforation. To make you the story shorter, it took her almost 9 months to heal. I remember she came back at her 6-month follow-up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And after that, she came back 6 months later. So now it's been 8 months that we saw her for the first time. And I remember she said, oh, what do you know? It's almost 9 months that I started this. If I should have kept him, I would be delivering now.
Mm-hmm.
That broke my heart. You know, that absolutely broke my heart. How she could relate the 9 months of all these atrocities that happened to her, and compared to maybe I should not have done it, and I would have the baby now. Can you imagine her trauma? I always think about her because when she said that, she understood what she had done, and she said, I would have had my baby now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she didn't regret it. She just said, I'm happy that I didn't do it. She right away understood it's been 9 months, and my baby would have been born.
I could definitely see why that would stick with you for sure. That might even stick with me. I didn't even go through it. One thing I want to note here really quick for the audience's sake is when we see, you know, there was the very famous Born Alive bill in 2022 in Montana that was actually shot down by referendum, which is outstanding to think about. I mean, Montana is considered, you know, red that bleeds red, and yet they shot down this Born Alive bill. And as you can see here from this story, it is necessary, actually. It is very necessary to get bills like this passed, especially because given the language, technically speaking, it doesn't even only apply to abortion. They always clarify, including in cases of abortion.
Exactly.
So, and then the other thing I wanted to note here really quickly, I just want to relate it to, there's a movie I quite like called Nefarious. And if you're not into sort of psycho thrillers, it's probably not great, but it's a Christian movie. And one thing I remember distinctly from that movie is that the story of the movie is a guy interviewing somebody on death row who swears he's been possessed by a demon, and seems to regret having made deal with this particular entity. And the long and short of the story is that he does end up being executed, but the guy demonstrates, yeah, actually I am, he is legitimately possessed. And one thing that I always just note about the story is how, despite the fact that the guy, when he's lucid, deeply regrets the fact that he has made this kind of a deal with this entity, it doesn't matter, because it's in the story, it's too late, right? And I just relate that kind of back to these stories with the abortion, where it's like, if there are any women out there who see this who are thinking about it, you almost write your name in blood on the dotted line if you do. So just you don't give that sort of. It's ironic we talk about bodily autonomy, right? You're giving your autonomy actually over to an organization that really doesn't care about you.
Exactly.
With that said, let's go ahead and jump back to this story now. So you're quitting the job, right?
Well, I didn't quit.
Oh.
So after I complained so much about the abortionist, right? After I complained so much about the abortionist, you're gonna call me naive, but here I am thinking I'm gonna get another Employee of the Year award because I just told them what the abortionist is doing wrong, right? Like, my boss is gonna be happy that I'm doing my job, right? That's my job as a director, to point out what's wrong and fix it, right? And the abortionist is wrong, so we need to fix it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Nope, I got fired.
Huh.
That's a kick. I got fired. I didn't quit. I got fired, and the way it happened was, so obviously there's always a drop, right?
Right.
I just told you that we had a law in Arizona that he had to make sure he had accounted for all the baby parts. I remember this was a Sunday in late September, and a 14-week, a girl, 19-year-old, 14-week pregnant, came in for her abortion. She was the last case of the day because he saved the bigger cases for last, in case something was wrong. But anyways, he left the head inside.
Right.
And the assistant that was in the room said, "Hey, Mayra, he already inserted an IUD." And just for the audience, an IUD is an intrauterine device used as a birth control, which actually it's an abortifacient, because what it does, it prevent implantation. So it's like a T, right? Copper T. And he had already inserted that on the girl. And she said he already inserted the IUD and I can't find the head. And I said, okay. And I told him, and he's leaving. And I'm like, oh, right. And she goes, I know he's going to fire me, but I don't know what else to do. And I said, don't worry about it. So then I go in the back and I said that I was helping her so we could finish faster. And then I was with her and we couldn't find the head. And he said, well, look everywhere. Go find it in the trash. And I can tell you that I myself had put those babies in the Ziploc and in the red bag trash for many times, right? I myself had signed up for the biohazard to take and cremate all these babies with medical waste. But when you hear someone say take it to the trash, oh no, it happened to me. It might be one of those moments that God's like, I need you to wake up because something happened. My stomach got really sick. I was really angry and we started arguing and I said, no, we need to find the head. And he said, go find one in the trash. I'm like, no, we need to find the head. So they repeated the ultrasound and we found the head above the IUD that he inserted. And he had to do another aspiration on that girl. And he didn't document it. And he didn't document that he used 2 IUDs. He didn't document that he had forgotten the head. He didn't document anything. So he falsified the patient chart, which is something he did all the time, falsifying the charts, right? So when I left, he left. And I said, you need to document that. That was a complication. Your chart says without complications. I'll take care of it. And when he left, I called my supervisor and said, "That's it. That's it. We have to do something about it. If you're not going to do something, I will. I'm gonna go to the health department. I'm gonna go to the medical board. I'm gonna go to the Planned Parenthood Federation because I thought they were gonna help, right?" And obviously they didn't like it. So a couple days later, they fired me, and that's how all this started.
And that is actually very good clarification there. I think one of the things that it is interesting, because I did not realize that, but it is interesting that I used, because the other person I was thinking of using today instead of Oscar Schindler in the monologue was, I believe his name's John Owens, but the guy who wrote the hymn Amazing Grace. And it turns out, sort of providentially, Schindler might have been a little bit better, because it's a collection of things that happen to you that almost force action, right? Where it's like, okay, there's a fork in the road here. You didn't have anything to do with the fork, but you have an opportunity to take the right, path there. With that said, though, so then now that you're out, how do you go from that moment where you're no longer director to a pro-life advocate? And if you want to take a little bit of time to talk about the lawsuit here, you can.
Yeah, of course. Well, that's where it started, right? So I would love to say that I walk out of Planned Parenthood and I became pro-life, like poof, but that's not true, right? Of course, when you're talking about conversion, most conversions don't happen overnight, right? And it requires a lot of learning. Why? Because we're still stubborn human beings, right? And we are there because we're not that strong in our faith and believers to begin with, right? So it's hard for people to believe, right? So when I left, the first thing that happened was that I got in contact with a lady on the sidewalk. For one reason or the other, they put her in contact with me. And the first thing she said to me when she took me out for lunch was, "Would you like me to take you for spiritual healing with a priest?" I never thought about that before that day, to be honest. I never thought about spiritual healing. I was angry. I was even feeling a bit vindictive, right? But mostly angry at the abortionist and my boss because I was doing my job. I'm not the one who did anything wrong, and I'm the one fired. My whole life just became crumbled because I'm the only sole provider of my children, and now I have no job, right? And then on top of it, the accusation they were giving me, according to what they said they were letting me go for, was because I had narcotics on my desk, which in the medical field, that's a really harsh accusation, because that means you're mishandling narcotics. No one else will hire you.
Right.
So if you think about it, I've been doing that for 17 years, and now they say that about me. Who else will give me a job, right? So when I went to the spiritual healing, and I went in there because I was desperate of feeling angry, right? And not only feeling angry, but the last 10 months of my life as a director there have been the worst 10 months of my life. I didn't sleep, everything that I witnessed there. So obviously when she suggested that, even though I wasn't that close to a priest, even though I was Catholic my whole life, I never had a relationship or an encounter with a priest to sit and have spiritual healing. But she did, and then I accepted, and I went in there, and then I started my healing process with this priest, and thank God I did. Because most people, I don't talk about this very often, but you're not gonna believe this, but literally 2 weeks after I started talking to this priest, which now it's been 3 weeks I left the job, the former medical director, who's another abortionist. You remember that African black lady on David Delyden's videos?
Yeah.
She used to be my boss, and she had just opened her own practice, Deshaun Taylor.
Oh, wow.
And she called me and offered me a job. I heard they fire you. Come work for me. So I'm thinking, right, what would have happened if I didn't start my healing? The desperation would have made me accept her job. I didn't know better. You think about the drug addicts, you think about the people in prostitution, right? Why they can't leave that world, right? You take them out and they're like, well, and they go back and fall again. Kind of the same concept. So then when she offered me the job, now that I have been healing with this person, I'm like, no, no, you're the same thing as they are. So no, thank you, right? So, and then with that, it came like, what can we do? I remember that the director of this pregnancy center said, "Well, what do you want to do about it?" I said, I have to do something about it, because if not, I cannot live with myself. And then with the help of my priest and all this community, we found my team, my lawyer, Tim Casey. And then when I talked to him about what happened, he took my case. And then we took Planned Parenthood for wrongful termination under the Protection of the Whistleblower Act. And you know, if I can tell you how many times people said like, "Oh, you're never gonna beat them. They're Planned Parenthood. You can't beat them." You know, probably I will be a millionaire right now if I had $1 for every time someone said that to me. But by the grace of God, and 2 years later, it was a really long lawsuit and 2 weeks of a trial. Now, just so you know, the entire jury selection was pro-abortion. Those 12 people were pro-Planned Parenthood and pro-abortion. I remember when the jury selection happened. Are you familiar with jury selection?
Yes, ma'am.
So when we were done on that first day of jury selection, I remember you meet with your lawyer, you know, to revamp about the day and tomorrow. And then I remember saying like, "Oh, what are we gonna do? They're all pro-abortion. They're all pro-Planned Parenthood." And he looks at me and he's like, "What is your mission?" And I said, "To show people what Planned Parenthood does wrong." But is your mission to show the people who think pro-life?
Right.
I mean, who think against abortion or pro-abortion? And I'm like, "No, pro-abortion. Well, they're your first ones." And I said, "Well, now that you put it that way, yeah." So you have to convince them that you're telling the truth. And we did, you know. So we won the lawsuit in 2019, August 16 of 2019. And you know, that victory wasn't only like a victory like personally, you know, but I think it was a really good thing on the pro-life movement, but also, you know, as a Hispanic, you know, immigrants tend to stay quiet when they see something wrong, being afraid of whatnot, you know, and I wanted to show that our voice is needed when we see something going wrong, especially in the abortion industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it is interesting, you know, I'm reminded briefly of, you know, of course, there's a lot of talk right now about immigration and whatnot, and it usually involves illegal immigration, but not always. Sometimes some people are anti-immigration generally. And it is fascinating, you know, some of the strongest conservative individuals I know of, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, you know, those are both Cuban, of course, but nevertheless,
it's the immigration.
Yeah, exactly, and especially, you know, there's a very strong traditionalism in Hispanic cultures that I think is useful for sure when it comes to these kinds of things. On top of just something that is generally good. So now, what kind of work did you start doing when you started doing pro-life activism, and how did you get to where you're at now?
Well, so at the beginning, I mean, it's really funny. I won the lawsuit on a Friday, and then on Monday, I was already sitting at the Fox Studios. If you watch that interview, you're gonna laugh up because I look so funny. I'm like, you know, doing an interview. So obviously, because of the magnitude of my lawsuit, so number one, it was an immigrant that won a lawsuit against Planned Parenthood for wrongfully terminating. Hardly ever makes it to a court, right? And then second of all, we sued them for just emotional distress. I didn't sue them for any economic problems, just the emotional distress part. And we won. And then the quantity, my lawyer never asked for a single amount of money. He said, you have to decide what her dignity value is. And the jury on their own chose a verdict of $3 million, which has been one of the highest amount of dollars given in a lawsuit, you know, of this kind. So those things broke the news, and I started getting an interview and everything, and then obviously doing some public speaking. And then I became part of And Then They Were None, which is the abortion worker ministry funded by Abby Johnson, another former Planned Parenthood abortion worker and Employee of the Year award recipient by Planned Parenthood. So
I gotta stop giving those out.
I know they did. That was our internal joke. We said that they probably stopped giving those awards because they turned people pro-life. I'm like, probably they did. They probably didn't do it anymore. But So first I was just part of the ministry, you know, being part of the healing process through them and everything. And then one day, you know, she's like, hey, you should work with me. And then I started working. At the beginning, I don't think she knew what she wanted me to do, but I started doing the global outreach. Since I do speak Spanish, I take our ministry to other countries where we have been able to have other former abortion workers kind of like join our ministry globally or expand and let people know how they can help workers leave the industry. And then at the same time I do work with Pro-Love Ministries, which is the love line where they help women in crisis as a client advocate and doing intake phone calls. But then personally we started Latinas for Life with my daughter. And the reason for that is you're not gonna believe the statistics, and it reminded me what you just said. Hispanics, Latinos are traditional. They're family oriented. You just mentioned the two most iconic representatives for us, which are Marco Rubio. I want him to be our president, to be honest. And then Ted Cruz, right? And when you think about those two people, you think about unity, you think about family, you think about protection, and you think about values. And that should be what represents the Latino community. So you're not gonna believe the statistics I have for you today. Even though we only account for 17% of the population in the United States, we are almost 50% of the abortions.
Wow, I did not
And
know that.
if you go to you already know that Planned Parenthood locates centers, the abortion industry locates their abortion centers in low-income communities.
Yeah.
They're highly, for majority of part, highly Hispanic, Latino, or Black. But on top of it, if you think about it, when you think about New York and Illinois and those states kind of like on that coast, we have to account that a lot of those Black people there are Latinos. So the Latino Black community is getting erased, right? And so when my daughter heard me say that on one of my talks, she's like, we have to do something about it to wake up the Latino community. So we started Latinas for Life. And the way we're targeting Latinas for Life, besides being through podcasts, you know, in issues that around the community, not only the abortion issue, but what gets to the abortion. Why has abortion grown so big into the Latino community when we're 90% Christians? We're still the biggest ethnicity of Christianity, Latinos, 90% Christians. So why is it that the most Christian of the population, of people, are having the most abortions, right? And it has to do with the eugenics that you talked at the beginning on that example, right? Of someone that told them, we don't want you having children.
Yeah.
And they bought it.
Yeah, and it's amazing to think too. You know, to note here really quick, because I think the audience is probably very familiar with the, frankly, anti-Black racism in the abortion industry and how massive the population of aborted Black babies has been. To add on top of that now, population of Latinos. You know, it's just funny to me that you have this group, their talking points are, you know, they're a feminist organization and they are helping the marginalized, quote unquote, right? And yet, I don't know if it's particularly controversial to say that men that like to go to bars and pick up women for a night are the ones most benefited by abortion.
Yes, sir.
And the population of low-income migrants and minorities are the ones who are most likely to be erased. So everything they say, the exact opposite ends up being
It
true,
is.
right? And
Yep.
I want to quickly note this too, because for my audience who's in Idaho, where I am at as well, and where we're at right now, we of course have the Reproductive Freedom and Privacy Act on the ballot this November. And what do they call themselves, the group that pushed this? Idahoans United for Women and Families. It's the same thing.
Right.
Anytime they say it, just think the opposite.
Right.
You know?
Just like Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, exactly. Planned Parenthood, but actually what you're talking about is unparenthood.
Unplanned
Yeah.
Parenthood.
Exactly. There's actually there's a South Park joke that talks about you know, it's unplanned unparenthood is what they call it.
Mm-hmm.
Not that necessarily, you know, South Park's got their own problems. But I do distinctly remember that joke because...
You want to know what's funny? In Colombia, Planned Parenthood, because you know the IPPF, International Planned Parenthood Federation, they're the ones who fund all these organisms in other countries, right? They're affiliates of them.
Mm-hmm.
And in Colombia, it's called Pro Familia, which is pro family.
Wow.
So yeah, think
Very
of it.
interesting. So now, with all of that noted, let's go ahead and get a little bit to policy. And this will, if you guys are familiar with William Buckley's old interviews or Tucker Carlson before he decided that he was a communist, you know, these are the portions where maybe I interact a little bit better as well, rather than just simply the story. But there's an awful lot of competing policy positions regarding pro-life. There's, of course, people who want 6-week bans, 10-week bans, 12-week bans, just third trimester, all the way to conception. You have the kind of pro-life establishment that I think is more represented by people like Kristen Hawkins, the sort of smash-mouth incrementalists they call themselves, who are trying to slowly move towards a complete abolition, typically led by Doug Wilson, and then the abolitionists, which I think are probably people are most familiar with T. Russell Hunter there. Before we get into the actual details of policy, in those three camps, do you prefer to align yourself with one, or do you kind of see it as united towards a common goal? Or
I think we have different ways to get there. I don't think I can see myself with either or. I want abortion illegal,
mm-hmm.
right? I think that is the solution,
right.
Because we know proven fact, and marijuana has proven it even more.
Mm-hmm.
When you don't have legal marijuana, there's less marijuana usage.
Yeah.
That's just common sense, right? What I would like is the punishment to start with the abortionists first,
mm-hmm.
right? The death penalty to them,
mm-hmm.
or just not death penalty because I don't believe in killing other human beings. That's our whole point.
Mm-hmm.
But lock them up for life, take away their license, not just a slap on their hand. And then something about the sperm donor, like I call them,
mm-hmm.
that on all the arguments we tend to never say. I mean, I have this crazy idea that if we push for policies that says we're gonna find every sperm donor person that their partner seek for abortion.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So if a woman showed up for an abortion, they have to disclose who the father is because it will be fined
mm-hmm.
by that abortion. I think we will reduce abortion. When we start punishing the men who get them pregnant more,
mm-hmm.
you know, then at the end, the three of them should be punished then.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're, like, what would you call when three people sit down and say, hey, let's kill this person?
Yeah.
Like a planned homicide.
Yeah, exactly.
So then we have to account all the people involved of this, but unless we start with the pharmaceutical companies who are the ones producing this massive amount of drugs and really the cartel,
mm-hmm.
right? Because they're a cartel that ship all these pills like crazy everywhere and nothing happens to them either, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think we can actually say, like, I like a lot of the thinkings. I mean, I think I'm universal then because I agree with a lot of them in many things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, what I agree the strongest is to have the crazy idea that even if you have abortion available, women can say, I don't need it.
Mm-hmm.
That's my ultimate goal, right? That even like what we have with children, if you put them, I mean, your dream as a parent should be that when your son is in middle school or high school, hopefully not elementary yet, right? Middle school, high school, and someone says, hey, here's marijuana, your son will be, I don't touch that.
Mm-hmm.
That's any parent's dream.
Yeah.
That should be the dream for all of us with abortion.
Mm-hmm.
That women do not choose it. Men do not choose it.
Mm-hmm.
Just because their heart and mind are aligned with the dignity of every human life.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, there's a couple points there I want to note too. So first of all, I am somewhat surprised, but pleasantly, that there is a desire to see punishments for all parties involved. Because I think, and I actually recognize, I think there are abolitionists that will take, which is the camp I most identify with, that will say the second victim narrative is entirely wrong. I think given some of the stuff you've talked about today, that's not true. There is a lot of And this is true, I think, universally. You know, when you think about drugs, of course, the heroin addict is responsible for taking heroin. It's on him. But I think we recognize also that there is a element of, you know, to be perfectly blunt about it, humans we're stupid creatures, and we get ourselves involved, all of us, every single one of us, in things that are both stupid and evil. And then once you're there, it's like, okay, now I'm here. That being said, though, it is like you say, you know, 3 people sit down and they plan this. What they're doing, they're planning homicide. So of course, there should be penalties across the board. It's interesting you mentioned the men there as well, because I actually, it's funny that we're having this conversation now. I have just come to this view maybe 3 weeks ago, because I was arguing with somebody on my X feed, actually, or Twitter, as people might remember. And a pro-abortion advocate was asking me, he's like, okay, you're saying penalties for women who seek abortions, but what about the men there? And my initial response was, well, you know, it's legally, the men don't tend to have much of a choice. Legally, she's the only one that does have a choice, and I know of many instances where the man actually did not want the abortion to take place but was overridden. And she kind of comes back with, okay, yeah, but those are the famous cases. Statistically speaking, those are not the majority. It's roughly 2/3 of either the man is just not involved at all, or sometimes he's even paying for it. Right? And it's like, what about those cases? And it's like, well, you know what? That's a good point.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you something. Like, I remember every day, the guys were supposed to drop them off, sign paperwork that they were responsible to pick them up. He will come in, he will pay, drop her off. Okay, you call me what, like 20 minutes when she's ready? We'll call you in like 15 minutes. You have to be here. So they're signing a paper that says you're within 15-minute distance. If I tell you how many times we were sitting there with those girls, they had already been blocked. They were not answering our phone calls, and dropped them off in our center by the guy who got them pregnant. So I can tell you that 60%, for sure, 60% of the abortions that I saw in my center were men that were like, you're not having it. I'm not going to be responsible. You're on your own. And then they were there because the guy was not going to be around. So we have to acknowledge that still the reason, the majority of reason of abortions are for the lack of manhood involved, right? So yeah, that's why I said that. So
yeah, and there are numerous ways you could do this, right? You could have penalties for abandoning, which I think should exist anyway. If there's a born child and you decide you don't want to be in his life, there should be some kind of penalty for that. But also, I mean, if you fund it, if, you know, hypothetically, if you hired a hitman with money that I gave you, all 3 of us should be, you know?
That's my idea.
Yeah, so
that's my idea, that if 3 people sit down and plan on killing someone, they get charged with the homicide and planning it. So the guy who drove her should be charged with it too.
Yeah.
You know, he should be the first one charged with it. And then I have a comment when you say there's guys that don't have a choice. A guy was telling me that I don't have a choice. I said, well, you do. He said, no, I don't. I said, before you got to bed, before you had sex with her, you could ask her, are you pro-abortion? Are you pro-choice? And she said, yes. You had a choice not to sleep with her because she will kill your child. You had a choice. You just didn't want to use your choice at that moment.
Yeah, and that's also, I entirely agree with that as well. In fact, one of the common things that we see on online discourse, at least, because people are more polite in person, is, well, if you don't want an abortion, then don't have sex. And that's typically directed at the women, and it's true. And it goes the other way as well.
Exactly.
You know, it takes two to tango, as they say.
Yeah. So if they don't want their babies to end up being killed, then they shouldn't sleep with women that are pro-abortion.
And maybe don't sleep with women you're not married to. But that's a conversation for another time.
That's a different podcast. We can do that. The sanctity of matrimony.
Yeah. So in terms of some specific policy choices, let's say, so right now, Idaho law with the Defense of Life Act is a 6-week ban with exceptions for rape, incest, and threat to the mother's life. Building off of that, do you think we'll put it in kind of three categories: bad, good, great. Bad meaning it's useless, good meaning we need better, but it's good at least, and great meaning we could stop here, we've won. How do you feel about that?
That's a really hard question because I would say still bad. Because I mean, if you ask me, I would love to move away from in case of rape or incest. I've met people who have been born in those cases. I know people. So it's really sad. Like I see them and I picture them not on this world and there's a law that protects killing them. It saddens me, right? Now with technology the way it is, literally there's no reason for abortion. And one thing people always misinterpret and they're saving the life of a mother. There's a difference of dismembering babies, like the place I used to work for. That's an abortion. And then there's a way of early delivering a baby when the mother's in danger and trying to do everything you can for both. That's different. But when you're allowing abortions in case of the mother's death, you're telling me that in order to save her life, you will be willing to dismember that baby. So trying to save the life and delivering the baby, which is what should be called early delivery, right? Not an abortion. So obviously I'm not gonna say that's good. It's better than many places. That's why you're the most pro-life state in our country, and probably a really pro-life globally too, right? But still, that's not good enough, right? That's not good enough. And now we're facing this, I don't even know what to call, proposal on the ballot, right? That we have seen across the states, literally lying to people of what their proposal will be like. Why am I not even lying about abortion, but even lying on to what reproductive rights on the Constitution Amendment will mean for transgender children?
Yeah.
Like, they're lying to our people because they're telling them it's only about abortion. It's only because women are dying without abortions, which is not true. But on top of it, it's opening that Pandora box so they can add transgender services on children at a young age, or legalize abortion for young girls, which we have seen in many states that passed that proposal.
Yeah, and I want to note here real quick too on that. And by the way, I actually expected, of course politely, but I expected a tiny bit of pushback only because there does tend to be differences here. You know, like if I were sitting with Kristen Hawkins, for example, I think we could have a very productive conversation, but we would not see eye to eye on certain things. I don't get that impression here at all, actually. I'm like on board with everything that's being said, so I want to say I appreciate that a lot. That being said, Reproductive Freedom and Privacy Act, it's on the ballot, guys. Their entire campaign was based on a lie, which is Idaho has no protections for the health of the mother. It's explicitly not true.
Right.
How do we know that that's not true? Well, because we are on the other side. The law doesn't even go far enough. Right? So that's not true. And then if you actually read, and we've done this, I'll provide, there'll be a little tag up there, and in the description below we'll provide, as well as links to the Ms. Rodriguez Fox News article. There's going to be a lot of goodies, so make sure you look in the description. The bill does not legalize abortion when there's threat to the mother's health, which is what the campaign is based off of. It legalizes abortion up until the point of quote-unquote fetal viability, which is considered to be between 24 and 28 weeks. Somewhat arbitrary, but
someone could really, like, what we're arguing in other states is that it's vague.
Exactly.
It does not define a time. So it could be 32, it could be 36, it could be 38.
And even on that note, it specifically says, or up to doctor's discretion.
There you go. Which
effectively means up till birth, right? So the campaign is based on a lie. The bill is way more radical than they're letting on. And I think, you know, what you're doing tonight, for example, is hopefully going to help people realize this is not what they're saying. This is not like, oh, there's an ectopic. There we go. This is not like an ectopic pregnancy or a sepsis issue or something like that. What they're talking about is a woman potentially going in, saying she's not mentally capable because of depression or something
Right.
along the lines,
Right.
and a doctor saying, well, we can have some kind of an abortion at 36, 35 weeks,
Yeah.
and they're open about that.
Yeah.
If you press them on it. In terms of penalty,
Mm-hmm.
I know you mentioned that you are not pro death penalty.
Mm-hmm.
What sort of penalties do you think should be dished out for the sort of thing? And also, how should we go about enforcing them? Because I think some might object that, in fact, this is Dr. Stacy Sapes, one of his current objections is that the law is vague and therefore unenforceable. And to a certain extent, that's not true, but he has somewhat of a point.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you think some of the penalties should be? What do you think should be some of the way we go about enforcing it? And then after that, I have some cultural questions.
Yeah, so penalty, that's what I was saying before, right? Before we can determine what the penalty will be for the mother choosing to kill her child in the womb, then we have to think of the penalty to the pharmaceutical company that's creating the drugs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the abortionist himself for making it a business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that then this is what the people against guns use against people like that we are pro guns, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're kind of like, they're pushing for the same thing we're pushing on abortion, right? Well, what I say is that if by us pushing that, then they could control guns, and by all means that's fine, as long as babies are not being dead, right? But punishing the pharmaceuticals, the abortionists, and the men who get them pregnant should come first. And I'm going to tell you why. Because if we push laws to punish women, I have seen, and you have seen it a lot lately, a lot of women that have been poisoned by
Mm-hmm.
boyfriends,
Mm-hmm.
right? A lot of women, I did witness women being forced into the centers to get abortions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, being deceived by, if you don't do this, I will kill you, I will kill your family, I will kill the other children you already have. You know, like being coerced into having the abortion. So what I'm concerned of, if we just pass laws just punishing the women, you know, how do we help the ones that are truly the victims? And I agree with you. Look, after 17 years working in the industry, I can tell you that 50% of them are not victims.
Mm-hmm.
Like, one thing about the pro-life movement is the pro-life movement is very, how can I say it, very compassionate.
Mm-hmm.
And they like to think that every woman that walks into an abortion facility is a victim,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I disagree, because I saw a lot of wholehearted women. I saw a lot of women that will say, I want the abortion because I just had plastic surgery and I'm not gonna gain weight.
Mm-hmm.
I heard women say, I want the abortion because I'm gonna be the bridesmaid of honor on my best friend's wedding.
Right.
That's a wholehearted reason to kill another human being.
Absolutely.
Right? And like that, I could give you tons of examples of really ruthless decisions to kill a baby,
Mm-hmm.
right? That have nothing to do with, oh, I don't have money to feed them, oh, I'm not in a position to care for them, like I don't have a house. Most people think those women are all homeless and don't have money to feed them, but that's
Right.
not true. 50% of them, I can tell you, were basically capable of caring for the child if they
Mhm.
wanted to. They just didn't want it to. So they're not all victims. So obviously there has to be a punishment for women that just like, oh, I just had plastic surgery, but I decided to have sex without protection, therefore I got pregnant and now I want to kill it. There
Mhm.
has to be some kind of punishment. But again, when we set those rules, we have to be able to recognize who will be coerced, who had been poisoned. Because I mean, what if they end up in the emergency room and said like, well, I didn't want to, my boyfriend gave me the pill.
Mm-hmm.
We could play it both. What if she's telling the truth, but what if she's lying? Does that make sense?
Right.
So I can see why it will be so hard to enforce if we don't have a base to start on punishing the rest of the parties involved,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which, like, I know it sounds crazy, but I say let's go after the men first, after the ones who get them pregnant. I think we'll have a very victorious reduction of abortions if we start punishing men first.
Well, and I think too, I'm not sure if this would be agreeable or not, but I'll say for myself, I tend to believe we're a patriarchal species by nature. So you have traditionalism, which is open about it and says, yes, men are head of the household and stuff like that. And then you have feminism, which pretends that it's empowering women when in reality it's empowering men in entirely negative ways.
Exactly.
And so I think there's a lot of truth to that, in so much as that we do need to create a society that demands of fathers that they are in the home, caring for the children, caring for their wives, or hopefully wives, right? But even in instances where they're not married. And I think that would go a long way. And that gives me another note here. You know, we have, since Jackson v. Dobbs, unfortunately, abortions have gone up roughly 20%. Now, I don't think there are people who are correlating that to pro-life law. I don't think that's fair. Correlation does not equal causation, and it doesn't make any sense to say abortion was made illegal, therefore it went up. But culturally, it does appear that, you know, it has gone up. So there appears to be more of a desensitization in that regard. Now, you're talking about here with the men, and penalties, of course, I think are very important all the way around. How do we go about creating a society where women value the life in their womb more, men value the life they're creating more, and doctors value their Hippocratic oath more?
Wow, that's a hard question, because I don't think we have one magic pill for that. I think what helped me is one day I realized through my healing process, you know, you as a Catholic, I've seen Christ in the cross so many times at every church I have seen since I was a little girl, right? But understanding what that meant, right? The way after all that process of taking his dignity away, right? Of the way they tortured him, the way they treated him, the way they spit on him, and the way they crucified him when he had done nothing wrong, right? And in the realization of how his dignity was taken away, but then once everything's done, you notice they did it, right? They couldn't.
Yeah.
They couldn't take it away. And the way he protected, the way he gave himself for us, and it is to protect the dignity of every human life, then if more people understood what Christ, I think the answer is Christ. If more people understood why Christ did that, why he went through what he went through, he knew everything was going to happen, and even his mother, right? His mother, I mean, I don't know if we can ask your wife or even you, but if you were told by someone, hey, I want you to have this baby, and this baby will suffer, and you're just gonna be standing by, and you're gonna allow this to happen, most of us will say, I don't think so, bye. Like, I don't care if you're God, but I'm not doing that to my child. We will be selfish about it. But we have this family that give us the example, and I truly believe that God created that family to give us the example of what a family should look like, what a father should look like in a world that he had all the right to kill her. He had all the right to not care for that child, and he could just walk away. But he didn't. He stood by Mary and raised Jesus. And then Mary, what a woman had to do to protect the life that was given to her, even knowing that she will be living the worst pain in her life, which is watching her son being crucified, right? And then Jesus, knowing that his whole life was meant for that, just to give us an example of self-sacrificing, but also the love, the greatest love given to humanity. Unless people are willing to see what that is all about, I don't know that our society can change. And it will start with men not only realizing what the value of the baby is, but the value of that woman, right? Because I can tell you, I had a lot of guys that took different women to my center, you know, and my staff will be like, oh, this jerk, he was just here a month ago with a different girl. That's what I'm saying. When are we gonna give more responsibility to the man doing this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to note too, here on that, talking about the Holy Family there, it is also interesting to note, you know, Joseph is a descendant of David, so there's a significant impact to his status, on top of the fact that he is well within his rights to abandon them. And then Mary was almost certainly maybe 16, so there's an impact to her life as well. And Joseph may have been very young himself. We don't really know, but given cultural context, we can be almost certain that she was 16, 17 years old. So to your point about the self-sacrifice, the status, the early I want to do what I want to do sort of thing, your legal rights, all that. I think that's a good point to kind of jump off on here, because there will be one other thing, because you are here for a reason, right?
Yes.
And it wasn't necessarily for this interview. So, but I want to note on that, it is entirely correct that the culture has to, there's an old quote from Andrew Breitbart. He says, politics is downwind from culture. Well, culture is downwind from cult. The word cult, we use it to refer to offshoot groups. What it actually means originally is just a religion, right? And culture is so named because it derives etymologically from that word. So what do I mean there? Politics is downwind from the way we operate socially. And the way we operate socially is downwind from the way we think about God. And so if you're watching this, if you're thinking to yourself, how can I get involved? There are ways. We'll talk about that when I'm back home jumping off this. I'll give you guys some resources and stuff like that. But biggest thing you can do is go to a local church, get married, have kids, change the culture yourself by having a genuine relationship with Christ, be in your scriptures, and I think that will
raising good people.
Exactly. That'll have a massive impact on this nation, the likes of which no political agenda could have. I mean, take the entire Trump movement, and you can just put it in a little vial that you give your children Tylenol with, and compare that to the ocean, and that's the difference in what we're talking about there versus in political versus religious. All right, you are here for a specific reason.
Yeah.
Go ahead and share with the audience not only what you'll be doing tonight, but also just where they can find more about your work. Anything you'd like to let them know. The floor is yours for any promotion you'd like to do here.
Thank you so much. So we are here to speak for Idaho Right to Life dinner. And the reason why they're having to do this dinner is, believe it or not, a lot of kind of these things happen in the states that kind of won, kind of like the pro-life movement took little victorious on the polls 2 years ago, or after Roe v. Wade got overturned or whatnot. But a lot of the people in the pro-life movement, those states decided that, maybe we're done. No, we're not done. No, that was just the beginning. So we're here to inspire. I'm hoping that I will inspire people tonight with my conversion story, that when they hear my story, they take it to other people and talk about it, and then that converts hearts, right? Because at the end, what I told you is what we all want. That if you put it in front of someone, that person is understand enough, no, I don't want it. You can give it to me, but I don't want it, right? I don't need it. We don't need to kill other babies. So that's the reason why we're here. And we'll also be working really closely with the Hispanic community in Idaho, especially coming on for the election and that tremendous and horrible proposal they have on the ballot. We're very faithful that if people, all they have to do is talk to 10 people. And this really works, If one person talks to 10 people about it, we can make it happen. Obviously it will be great if we have the millions the other side does to do all their TV commercials and radio line commercials, but we don't have that money. So we rely on you and your church and your pastor and everyone involved and your children to pass the word about the lies in the amendment coming up in the ballot. And if you can follow us on Latinas for Life, Mayra Rodriguez, that's my social media. By the way, I just started TikTok 2 days ago with Latinas for Life. It's hard.
Mm-hmm.
I can keep up with the TikTok. But anyways, if you all can follow us and spread the word, if you are a Hispanic, Latino, you don't even have to be full blood Latino descendant, speak Spanish, like tacos, you're welcome to join Latinas for Life. We will gladly take all the help we can get to spread the word in the Latino community against all these issues regarding abortion and the dignity of human life.
Absolutely. And thank you for that. And to the audience, I want to thank you guys also for your participation in watching here today. This has been, I think, a excellent interview. Those of you who are in Idaho, remember to vote this November no on the Reproductive Freedom and Privacy Act. It is, and read it as well. It is online. You can read it for yourself. You can also watch, link will be in the description, our video reading it for you guys. And there'll be tons of stuff in the links as well. We're going to have links to all of Ms. Rodriguez's socials, links to the interview with Fox News, links to some stories regarding the lawsuit, and anything else that I think is going to be beneficial for you guys. If you stay tuned here for just a moment, I'm going to have a little bit of commentary here at the end, roughly 5 to 10 minutes. But for now, let's go ahead and transition to that. All right, guys, so I told you I was going to give you a little bit of commentary here at the end, and that's what I'm going to go ahead and do now. I actually don't have a lot to say on the debate, or excuse me, on the interview itself. Sorry, I just got out of a debate as I'm recording this. I don't have much to say on the interview itself, only because I think it kind of stands on its own 2 feet a bit, to be honest with you. It was excellent. It was absolutely excellent. It was an absolute pleasure getting to know Mrs. Rodriguez. We ended up going to a pro-life gala later on that night where she ended up speaking about a lot of the same things she talked about with us in the interview, but adding some more additional context and stuff like that. She was the keynote speaker there, actually, and that was absolutely fantastic. And we got to mingle a little bit with some of the other people associated with Idaho Right to Life. It was very fun, actually, and something that I hope to do more and more often as time goes on. And fun fact, the only reason we were at that gala in the first place is because Ms. Rodriguez kind of made sure that we could be, right? I was not able to pay myself, and she, asked the director, whoever was in control of that sort of thing, if it was possible for us to come in, and they said yes, and I'm very thankful for that. She's a wonderful person, and I was very pleasantly surprised with some of the answers there. It's unfortunately it's so difficult to find people who have a conviction of the of the culpability of women, of equal, they have a conviction that babies should be protected equally, um, who are willing to speak so boldly about the responsibility aspect of it. I very much liked the part where she's talking about, like, yeah, of course the abortionist needs to be punished, of course the woman needs to be punished. The man also, who is abandoning his wife or girlfriend or whatever, there should be some penalties for that too, and especially if he's going to pay for it, then he's culpable, and I agree with that as well. It's not something that is typically spoken about, I think, but it should be. And on top of that, the emphasis on, while ensuring justice is enacted is very important, and punishing the criminal is very important. The emphasis on life itself, on Christ, on supporting people, changing the culture. You know what I mean? I think that's a very important thing as well, because it could be a negative if we were entirely wrapped up in only our desire to see justice come about, right? Justice does need to come about, of course. There's no doubt about that. But ultimately, we shouldn't be, having like a bloodlust or anything like that. What we should be trying to do is ensuring that this kind of, like she said, that this kind of a sin, that this kind of a crime is unthinkable, because people, not just because of consequences, but because people recognize there is inherent value and dignity in all those who bear the image of God, whether they be in the womb or whether they be in their 80s. Doesn't matter. And if we get to the point where the culture changes such that we start to look at the unborn in that way, such that we start to look at life in that way, excuse me, I think that will do far better than any sort of law we could pass. In fact, I'm going to end really quick with an antidote here. Anecdote, excuse me, not an antidote. If you need an antidote, go to the hospital. But, I'm a student of history. In Roman history, particularly the reign of Caesar Augustus, he tried to outlaw adultery. And of course, one understands why he wanted to do it. He wanted to maintain the sanctity of the family, which is interesting even for somebody who's a pagan like Augustus, right? There's a level of common grace given there where he felt that the sanctity of the family was something that needed to be upheld, needed to be supported, needed to be state supported specifically. And so he outlawed adultery. And, like I said, one certainly understands why he wanted to do that. One could even say that it was a good and honest and just thing. And it failed tremendously. And ultimately, future emperors ended up rescinding it or not enforcing it. And the reason it failed was because Augustus figured out exactly what the presidents of the United States figured out during Prohibition, which is that legality is only one half of the battle. In fact, really, it's kind of only a third of the battle. The other 2/3 is the population and their disposition, right? Should you make things that are evil and wicked and harm others illegal? Of course. But ultimately, it's going to amount to nothing if you can't change the hearts and minds, if you can't cause metanoia in the people, which is repentance, and cause them to seek Christ, to honor the woman in the case of the man in the case of the woman, the child in the case of them both. And so I very much appreciate that is her goal. That is our goal here at the Synagogue News as well. And I just want to say that this was an excellent interview, and I hope you guys enjoy. With all that, friends, let's go ahead and huck our wares real quick. If you liked this video, please remember to like and share this interview, and consider subscribing to the channel if you have not done so. Hit that bell to get notified every time that we go live. Remember to leave any questions, comments, criticisms, concerns, critiques, or anything of that nature in the comment section down below. Also, if you'd like to follow me on various social media platforms, you can find links to all of them in the description below. I am on Gab, Parler, Facebook, Minds, Truth Social, Twix, which is what I call Twitter/X. If you'd like to follow us on any of those platforms, click the link in the description or look me up at the tag The Synagogue. Also, please consider sharing this video to those platforms. Consider following us on the Rumble account, just in case any of our videos get struck down, as well as to reward Rumble for not censoring conservative speech and kind of disincentivize YouTube for their censoring of conservative speech. Not to mention, it just gives you a backup of the channel. Please be sure to check out all of the good stuff we have down there regarding Mrs. Rodriguez and her work. We have, like I said, that Fox News interview, a couple news articles down there, as well as links to the various things that she's doing, her socials, things like that. So please do consider checking those things out. And of course, if you'd like to check out more from me on the other platforms, I do have my religious channel, The Synagogue. Please do consider checking that out. Link is in the description. My book, 15 Questions for Calvinists Answered, link in the description. My paper on the deity of deception argument, link is in the description. My history channel, Hysterios, again, link is in the description. And my music channel, if you like hip-hop, link is in the description. I want to remind you guys to be vigilant, be watchdogs, and of course, ask yourselves the question, in the face of Armageddon, will you compromise? Shalom.